So we will continue looking at sounds which we have seen last time a little bit, right? We started with the idea that sounds are basic blocks of language, right? Remember, there aren't infinite sounds in any language. A set of sounds in any language is limited in number. Also, all the languages share sounds. Some would share more, some would share less. Nonetheless, there are distinct patterns, distinct sounds in every language. There may be distinct sounds in every language. Okay? And then we will begin looking at places of articulations and manners of articulations today again. And mostly we will be talking about places of articulations of consonants today, and we have looked at the distinction between consonants and vowels, right? Very quickly, what would be the most significant distinction between a consonant sound and a vowel sound? Anybody? Obstruction of airflow, obstruction of exhaling flow of air in the oral cavity. Okay. If it is obstructed at a different point in different ways, that is at different places of articulations and with different manners of articulations, then they become consonant sounds. However, if there is very little obstruction and the flow is not totally obstructed, then they are vowel sounds. Vowel sounds are fundamental to words, to the process of word formation, because we see empirical evidence across languages that there is no word possible without a vowel sound, okay? Which tells us vowel sounds are fundamental to language. Okay? So let us look at some of more places of articulations. We will keep coming back to this picture several times. I do suggest you to take a look at this picture very carefully when you are looking at it at home on your machines as well. Okay? In this picture we have seen that there are two important places to begin with. One is nasal cavity, the other is oral cavity, and this place, uvula, is one very crucial organ which is responsible for nasal quality of sounds, in the sense that if airflow is allowed to move through this cavity, then we get nasal quality in sounds. If uvula is raised and this nasal passage is closed, then we get only oral sounds. All right? And then we come to other places of articulation, where the important ones are going to be, look at this. Do you see this place? This place, which is called a velum. You see this place? This is called palate. Then things like these, which are teeth, and then lips. Okay? And then right close next to teeth, you see what we know as alveolar ridge. Do you see this thing? Alveolar ridge here. And then this is in the oral cavity, we have this line as we say tongue. This is the back of tongue, this will be the tip of the tongue, alright. So, I am only drawing your attention to some of these places which are going to be responsible for a large number of sounds again. One more thing which you should look at is this. Do you see this thing? This is called glottis, and vocal cords are located here, right? Anybody plays any musical instrument? No? Yes? So how do you get sound out of musical instruments? Vibrations of what? So there are strings in the in some of the or many of them, and then when you try to vibrate them in variety of ways, then you get different combination of sounds. That's all I can say about them, and that's visible. You can see people doing that, and then there is underlying system behind that. Those who know how to do it well, they can come up with more combination of sounds. So look at this. There are vocal cords located here in the glottis. So these are going to be important places for us to look at. Did we see vowel sounds last time? What's very crucial to refresh is there are only 3 places of articulations. That is, we have divided the entire oral cavity into 3 parts. One is back, mid and front. The reason why it has been divided only in 3 parts is because the obstruction of sound is very minimal. Okay? So for the back vowel, whatever little obstruction that you see is in the back of the oral cavity. For mid vowels, the little bit of obstruction that you will see is in that part, and then for front vowels like oo and oo, you see it being some sort of obstructions in the front. And then we have seen, according to manners of articulations, there are 2 of them. One is a short vowel, the other is long. We started talking about vowels when I had asked you questions about how many vowels are there in English, and remember we had seen there are 5 vowels, and then we talked about them a lot, and we also talked that there is nothing called A for apple. Remember those things? Now, besides that, now is the time to look at it more carefully, where the distinction between a vowel sound a and a is only in terms of the duration of these sounds, and that duration is also relative duration, which is if a is longer, then a has to be shorter than that. Okay? E, if it is longer, then the short one has to be shorter than that. So there is no time defined for these short and long vowels. This duration is relative. All right? And they have been very carefully classified in the studies of these sounds: short, long, and short, long. All 3 back vowel, mid vowel and front vowels have their 3 longer counterparts. And then there are more vowels. I told you last time that this classification was done long time ago. That was around 2500 BC by a grammarian Panini, who studied these things. Does anyone know where he lived, where he studied these things? Last time I remember somebody was telling me about Panini. Somebody? You? Okay. So, do you know where he, I mean this is not just for him, anybody can answer this question. Do you know where he lived, where he did these things? No, that is not very crucial for what we are discussing, but it is important to locate it in time and history, time and place particularly. He studied it in the ranges of Hindu Kush mountains, which are now parts of northwestern Pakistan or Afghanistan. The idea is probably he studied these things at Takshashila, okay, or around that area. Another important part is, in these many years, 2500 years, studies after studies of sound system and anything that we know today in modern science about sounds, such studies have not contradicted anything that he was talking about. And I think I remember now when last time before we stopped last time, I told you that these sounds are unique sounds in the sense that they are part of all the languages. All the languages that were there during Panini's time, or may not be now, or the languages that we have today or may not have been around during time of Panini. Two crucial examples are Hindi and English, and many other languages that we speak. Get this thing? All right. Moving ahead, now we want to look at consonant sounds. In the set of sounds that we are going to look at, and that are very common in most of the languages that we speak, almost all the languages that we speak, these are 5 different places of articulations. So, in the oral cavity, you will see the location of these 5 places which we have looked at, and we are going to see that again. The sounds that come from velum, remember that place, velum in that cavity? No, we are going to look at that in a moment. Such sounds are called velar sounds. Palate gives us palatal sound. Teeth, dental sounds. Lips, labial sounds. And there is something called retroflex, which I will show you in a moment. So let us look at some more on manners of articulations. Let me first show you some of these sounds, and then this manner of articulation or places of articulations will make more sense. Okay? Do these sounds sound familiar? When we say ka, okay, let's talk about couple of generic things first to establish certain fundamentals, and then we look at their classifications according to places of articulations and manners of articulations. When we say ka, is this, which language does this sound belong to? Is this sound in Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, Hindi, Sanskrit, English? In a way, all the languages that you may be speaking. Okay? And bear with me, I am not just counting these languages for the sake of their names or the languages that you may be speaking. I am trying to draw your attention to the fact that these sounds are not specific to a language. Okay? And similarly, the manners of articulations that you see on the vertical axis. So, if ka is a velar sound, it's not going to change depending upon different languages. This point making sense? The place of articulation is not going to change depending upon different languages. Therefore, we are talking about the process of sound production, which are not specific to a language. At this point also, if I can remind you about the things that we established way early in the beginning, that these are the ways to look at fundamentals of language. Remember the distinction that we established between language and languages, right? So, when we look at these things, or in a particular, in these manners, then we are talking about language. We are not looking at languages, all right? Okay. So, it will be helpful if you can say some of these sounds and really see whether these, we do not have to locate velum, but we can see those areas in your oral cavity whether they are really true or not, right? You do not have to say it too loudly, but you can say it. You have said this sound million times by now. By million I simply mean uncountable numbers. Probably we do not even remember how many times a day we say these sounds, right? But one more time does not make much of a difference, and that time is going to be the time when you are really going to see that these are velar sounds, that is coming from velum. So, can somebody say this sound loudly? Sandeep? Can you say this sound loudly? Ka? Ka? Do we see that this is located in this area? Not exactly at this point, in this area. Do you see that? When we say ka, ka, do you see any involvement of lips in that? Teeth, tongue? Do you see that? What is the involvement of tongue in production of ka? So, this is the part, this is the place, right? And this is the tongue back, that is back of the tongue, right? Tongue is a long muscular thing in the oral cavity, right? It's not very good looking organ in any sense, but we know how it looks, right? We see that almost every day. So, and if we divide that also into several parts, that is tip of the tongue, and then you see the sides of the tongue, they are called blades of the tongue, and then we have back of the tongue. I promise you we will not talk about these things any further, okay? It has, all such parts have a huge role to play in production of a particular sound. So, when we say ka, what happens to the tongue back? It raises a little bit, right? And then probably it is going to be touching that velum part. In that process, it blocks the flow of the air completely, all right? And then when the release takes place, the blocking is not responsible for the sound. The raising of back of the tongue upward towards velum blocks the flow of the air. When it is released, the sound that we get from that part is called ka, and we give them a name, it is called velar sound. Once again, what is important for us again to keep in mind is we are not aware of all these things happening. We are not doing anything on purpose. Remember, just a moment ago I told you we don't even know how many times we say this sound. We don't pay attention to this process that we are talking about. Therefore, we don't know. Therefore, we take a moment to think what's going on with the back of the tongue and velum and all that, I don't know. So, in order for us to be saying this sound ka 100 times a day, 1000 times a day, we really don't have to pay attention to its mechanism, the motor movement available for this sound. However, when we look at it in terms of what is happening, then this is where we get it. Clear? Palatal sounds. So, what was the next one? Palatal? Cha. Cha. Once again, for a generic confirmation, is this sound available in all the languages that you speak? Cha. Now, when you say the sound cha, do you see the difference in place of articulations between ka and cha? Yes? And as you can see in the picture, it's moving forward, right? Velum is toward the back of the mouth and palate is almost in the middle. So much so that we can realize, we can feel that, right? There are two parts of palate. One part is called hard palate, the other part is called soft palate. That distinction is not made in this picture, but there are two parts of this. That distinction is also important for several sounds, may not be important for the sounds that we are talking about right now, but there may be some sounds in some language which may have palatal sounds which are coming from soft palate and or palatal sounds coming from hard palate. If there are sounds which are coming from both of them, some sounds from hard palate and some sounds from soft palate, then they are given different names. For the sound cha, we call it palatal because that distinction is not important here, okay? And I am talking about only, I'll repeat this thing again, I am talking about only 5 places of articulations because I am trying to restrict with this description only to some sounds. This is not to say that there are only 5 places of articulations in the oral cavity for consonantal sounds. Understand? There could be more, and not could be, there are more for other languages. Okay? It's just that we are not talking about lot of them here. At the end of it, I'll give you some of them, some such sounds which will have different places of articulations which we are also familiar with. Okay? Just to see. All right. So, in the production of palatal sounds we have moved forward, and now velum is not responsible. What is responsible is palate when we say cha, right? I'm sorry for this arrangement. Now, the next one, we leave the next one for a moment, okay? We go to the dental ones. That dental sound is called ta. Ta. Do you hear the sound clearly? Ta. Can you say that? Ta. Right? Can you give me a word where you see these dental sounds? A word with ta?
Tabla.
Tabla. Very nice.
Thinking.
Thinking is different. We say thinking is different. Let's leave this for a moment. Ta. Somebody from there? Tabla is one. No. I'm coming to tennis in a moment. Remember these words. Thinking and tennis both. Talaiva. Okay. Tail. What's the word for tail in Telugu? Or for that matter, Telugu? Ta. Right? But nobody told me what's the word for tail in Telugu. You understand tail? Tail, oil? Okay. Do you hear the sound ta in Telugu? That's the sound we are talking about. Okay? Now, what's the place of articulation for this? What's going on with this sound?
The upper surface of the tongue is touching teeth.
Upper teeth. Right? Say it again. Ta. Say it again. Pay more attention to this and then tell me. What you have said so far is right. Ta. No, that's fine. That's fine. Tip of the tongue. Which part of the tongue? Tip of the tongue. Right? Has something to do with teeth. What does it actually do? Touching that upper part is also kind of true, kind of fine. But it does more than that.
It's obstructing the air that is coming.
That is given for all the sounds. See, this is why we have already talked about obstruction of air in the beginning. And now we are talking about a specific mechanism. It's just that you need to focus a little bit more when you are saying ta.
You're building some kind of pressure and then we release the pressure.
That is also true. It's true just like it's true for ka, just like it's true for cha. The difference is because velum is too far back or palate is centrally located, so when the airflow is completely obstructed, we do not feel what you say pressure. Okay? And because we are allowing the flow of the air to come all the way toward the front of the mouth, therefore you feel the pressure. That's given. But nice observation. There is something else that is happening which is very, very clear. Nobody wants to say that? Okay. Let me say this to you and then tell me whether it is true or not. The tip of the tongue goes in the middle of both upper teeth and lower teeth. When you say Telugu, tail and tabla, does it or does it not? You can only feel this when you say this. Does it or does it not? See, it's too obvious also in the sense that it is too much in the front, right? And why you may be thinking that it doesn't go in the middle of the teeth is also something that I'm going to show you or I'm going to tell you. But first say the word Telugu the way we say, or tabla or tail or many other words with ta. We are not talking about ta like table. What can you give me a couple of more words with ta? Tea, table, top. We are not saying these sounds. We are talking about dental sounds like tabla, Telugu, tail and more. Do you agree with this thing or you are in agreement with this because I am saying so? Do you feel the tip of the tongue going in the middle of the upper teeth and lower teeth? Now it's too fast. You cannot hold it for a long time. If it doesn't stay there for you to feel it. See, teeth is a very sharp object, right? At the same time, tip of the tongue is the softest thing. If it stays there any longer, you can understand the violence that can happen. You see this thing? Therefore, however, that happens every time we say that. All right? And it's observable when you say these sounds in isolation. You simply say ta, ta. Only then you see it happening. When you say words fast, because when you say words fast, you don't see that happening obviously, because there may be more than one sound ta in a word. When we say a word which may have 4 or 5 sounds in it, we don't pay attention to the places of articulation of each sound. And a word may have a sound palatal, may have a dental, may have a velar, all kinds of sounds are possible in a word. Remember these things that we have been discussing so far? When you put all these discussions in perspective, then you see more clearly the generic or fundamental aspects of language that we have discussed so far. Alright? Now, the ta is a dental sound for that purpose, that we are going to see the tip of the tongue in the middle of 2 teeth, therefore it is called dental. One more point at this stage, we have talked about 3: velar sounds from velum, palatal sounds from palate, and dental sounds from teeth. In all 3 of them, we see the role of tongue. Do we see that? The back of the tongue is raised up to touch velum, tip of the tongue goes in the middle of the teeth for dental sounds, but these sounds are not named after tongue. So, what is the difference between ka and kha? Again, more air. Can we say it a little bit more precisely? When you say more air, please pay attention to this. We are not denying that there is no air flow in ka. It is only more air, and that more is kind of visible, right? And it's very simple. If you put your hand close to this, close to your mouth, and say the 2 sounds, you will feel more flow of air in the second one. Ka, kha. You see that? Can you do that please? The more depends on how much more you release, but there is more between the 2. Okay? This is why, and this is referred in modern terms, the terminology that I have used is aspiration. Okay? Aspiration. So, ka is indicated as minus aspiration and kha is indicated as plus aspiration. Alright? So, that at least gives us one way of distinction between these 2 if we are looking at only flow of air, right. Now, look at ga. Ga. So, when we say ka and ga, there is no flow, both of them have similar flow of air, but still there is a difference between the 2. When we say ka and ga, there is a difference between the 2. Is there a difference or not? Ka and ga. Now, if we only put aspiration in picture, then it fails to account for the distinction between ka and ga. The flow of air, more flow of air, which we know as aspiration, accounts for the difference between ka and kha very nicely. But again, when we want to look at the difference between ka and ga, we see no difference in terms of flow of air. Therefore, that parameter fails. Okay? However, what we observe empirically is there is a difference between the 2. So, we need to account for whatever is responsible for that difference, we need to articulate that, right. Again, when we say gha, then we see the difference, right. But what we see is the difference between ka and kha and ga and gha. Again, we do not see the difference between ka and ga in terms of flow of air, and we have similar kind of flow of air for gha and kha, but still there is a difference between the 2. Am I making sense to everybody? So, just flow of air, that is aspiration, is not telling us much. So, there has to be something more which should be responsible for the difference in these two sounds. Now, let us go back to vocal cord, what we saw in the picture, and remember where it is located? It is located in glottis, right. So, what is after aspiration that you see in this chart? It is called voice, right. Voice is the term for vibration in the vocal cord. Okay. If there is no vibration, then that is minus voice, and if there is vibration, then that is called plus voice. Now, this vibration is very minimal, it is hard to distinguish, but that is the voicing, that is the vibration which is responsible for the distinction between ka and g. However hard that may be, it is possible. Where do you think will be glottis located? Somewhere here. So, if you put your this thing here and say the two sounds ka and g, ka and g, ka, g. It is not as nice as it comes out of musical instruments, but you do see more vibration when you say g, okay? And that is the voicing which makes the difference between ka and g, and also between kha and g. So, ka becomes a sound which has no vibration, no air. Kha is a sound which has only more air but no vibration. Ga is a sound which has no air but vibration, and gha is a sound which has both more air and vibration. Get this thing? Now, if we put this binary distinction of more air and voicing in picture, then we can assign distinctive features to each one of these sounds, even though the place of articulation is same for all of them. So, in that case we can say velar plus voice plus aspiration, and then we know which sound we are talking about. We have to say nothing of what we have discussed so far, or to put it differently, we only need to say that much, and that accounts for everything that we have done so far. Okay? So this whole thing, the distinction, binary distinctions, which we call manners of articulations, because it is about more air, less air, more vibration, less vibration, these are termed as manners of articulations. And different locations in the oral cavity are called places of articulations. This may not have been told to us for a reason, but when you look at these sounds, then you see why are they arranged the way they are arranged. Okay? Now, since we are looking at this chart, I should also draw your attention to one more thing. Which one of these 5 places of articulations that you have seen so far is more audible? Which sounds that we discussed few days ago that children can see more visibly? Which of these places of articulations is easy to see? Lips, right? They are quite in the front, it is observable, right? Still, when we see the chart and this classification, what we see is they are starting at the place which is not visible, right? what would be wrong if they started this whole chart with labial sounds first? In other words, my question is, can you see the underlying precision, unstated fact that this chart wants to tell you without writing or without saying that?
The position of the word indicates where we are stopping the airflow.
So that's fine. That's absolutely true. So in labial, that place is lips, and in velum, that place is velum. But why? That is fine, true. What I am asking is, and please look at this question carefully, what I am asking is, why this arrangement does not start with labial, because labial sounds is very easy to see. Remember, even kids start watching movements of lips, therefore they end up saying words like papa, mama, baba, right? They see the movement of lips, they are not really imitating, they are only trying to move their own lips as well, and they end up saying these things, which we think they are saying papa. The child may not know anything about papa, what it means, or what the word actually means. Now you see why that might be happening. But my question is more fundamental before we stop. Why not starting with labials first and then velum? Because labials are more visible, and if at anything that is true about velars, velum is not visible at all. So what the person who did this arrangement, what is the rationale behind that? Is there no rationale, or is there some rationale which is not stated but it's for us to see?
So the ordering of the sound shows that they start up at the back of the
They start at the back of.
and then they gradually move out.
Very true.
From throat, then palate, then up to finally lips.
Absolutely true.
But why is lips at the end and not at the first?
Because
It has an answer in what you said.
because the velum distinguishes between nasal sounds and oral sounds.
Not true, but not the answer.
You should learn from sound and not sight.
No. That's also true, but not the answer to this question. The simple answer is, it's not mentioned categorically here. But remember, what is responsible for production of sounds? Which air? Inhaling air or exhaling air? Exhaling air starts modification where? Glottis and upward. Without writing, this arrangement tells you that please know that while arranging this thing in this particular way, I know that inhaling air is not responsible for this thing. So I am giving you the direction in which the flow of air is responsible for production of sounds. You see this thing? If someone did this today, there is no Nobel Prize for linguistics. Okay? If someone did this thing today and talked about all these things, I am not sure about Nobel Prize, but this must have got them something. But this person did not even write the things they knew about it. Trust me, this arrangement could not have been possible without the person knowing about these things. See the point that I am trying to make? So it is not a coincidence that it starts with velum and goes to labial. He is moving gradually from velum to palate to dental and others, to lips. So he could have gone all the way backward. But not going backward simply tells you that I am talking about the directionality of sounds, directionality of flow of air, which is responsible for production of sound. Get this thing? There are few more things, salient features of these sounds, and little bit more about manners of articulation that we need to discuss, which we discuss tomorrow when we meet at 1. Thank you.